parents of toddlers and young children, this is for you. Do you have a picky eater at home? Does your child pitch a fit at a mealtime? Sometimes just getting your little cutie to eat is a real adventure, a real challenge, but we have some help. Here to discuss some practical strategies for baby and toddlers feeding is registered dietitian and feeding expert Rachel Rothman. Thank you so much, Rachel, for coming and joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, I posted about this on my Facebook page to get some comments and questions, and it's a real crack up what parents have to go through. And it seems like I just started feeding my 6-month-old real food, and right now she's fine with it. But as they get older, they seem to get pickier. What happens?
Definitely. So usually around 1 or 2 years of age, toddlers kind of become picky. And there's a lot going on developmentally. So toddlers are becoming more independent. They have their autonomy. They're also learning their words, right? They're learning how to talk and how to express their wants and needs and desires. So all of these things kind of coupled together leads to a frustrating experience for parents at times.
Okay, so you have 4 steps to help a child learn to start eating new foods in a peaceful way.
Yes.
Give us some tips. Give parents 4 tips they can use.
Definitely. So my first tip is actually to think about this feeding framework. It's something called the division of responsibility. So there is a registered dietitian and a family therapist. Her name is Ellen Satter, and she developed this framework, the division of responsibility. So with it, she talks about how parents are responsible for the what, when, and where of feeding, and children are responsible for the how much and whether of eating. So what that means is that as parents or caregivers, we have a role of providing the food and setting a time and a place, but ultimately we let our children decide how much they're going to eat and if they're going to eat that food or not. And this really helps to develop, we want our children to develop a healthy relationship with food, meaning we want to be able to feed from a place of trust without bribing or forcing or coercing, right?
That's what we do as parents, isn't it? So at breakfast time, here's breakfast. Let's sit down and eat a breakfast, a nice healthy breakfast. Let's do this.
Yes, but thinking about that when we think about what we're offering, because toddlers do become picky and because they might have some foods they're not eating, we're providing the what. But we always want to make sure that at least some of those foods we're providing are foods we know that they will eat, maybe with some new foods as well to incorporate variety in there.
Okay, so how do you introduce foods that top allergens, things like peanuts, eggs, tree nuts? How do you do that and when?
Yeah, so typically with allergens, you're going to want to introduce those when your baby's around 6 months of age. So I recommend starting solids. So this is kind of the starting solids piece, but starting those foods as you start introducing solids. You definitely want to make sure you're doing it in a safe way with whatever form of feeding that you're doing. So usually about 6 months, maybe a little earlier or a little later.
Can you put peanut butter on the tip of your finger and let them lick that and see if that works?
You do just want to make sure peanut butter can be a choking hazard, so as long as it's not like a big glob of peanut butter, but you can definitely do that. And you want to monitor them after you've provided the food as well.
A little bit at a time.
Yes.
Okay, real quick, because I want to get to these. We posted, like I say, we posted about this on Facebook, got the funniest comments and questions. So we've got some questions from viewers and parents. What should I do when I offer a nice healthy meal with variety, but they refuse it all with a tantrum and just want grilled cheese? Do you give in so they can eat something? What do you do?
Yeah,
that's pretty common.
Very common. So my first recommendation is no, we're not going to give in. We're not going to give them the grilled cheese. But if we go back to that division of responsibility, we're providing the what. And I love that this parent who wrote in is providing variety. That's great. So with that variety, again, we want it. My rule of thumb is actually about 75% of the food that we're providing is going to be foods that they've eaten in the past or we know that they like, with about 25% new foods or foods that they're still learning to like, I call them.
That's a good one. One more. We have time for one more, I think.
Okay, great.
I struggle with amount. My 2.5-year-old is pretty adventurous, but sometimes he barely eats anything, even if he likes it. How long do we give him to finish a meal? And if we let him walk away without barely eating, how do we handle it when he wants snacks 10 minutes later?
Yeah, so I recommend that families start thinking about a structure for meal and snack time and having really a schedule. Usually toddlers need to eat every about 2 hours or so. So if your child's not eating anything at a given meal or snack, that's okay. They'll have another opportunity a couple hours later. I do also want to reassure parents that eating more or less on different meals or days is completely normal. Yeah, so they're going to make up for it. If they eat a lot on one day, the next day they might not eat as much.
Okay, so the one thing I've learned in 6 months of having a baby is every day is different.
Every day is different.
Consistency and patience.
Yes.
That's what it takes. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. We want to have you come back. There's so much we can get into about this. If you're cutting your blueberries in half so your child will eat them, that's okay too, right?
Yes.
For a little bit.